everybody, welcome to Stamping with Melva. I'm here today to show you how to make a card using the Sand and Sea collection from the January to June mini catalog from Stampin' Up. This is one of my favorites, and I know it was one of my customers' favorites when I did my launch party a couple of weeks ago. And on this card, I've actually also incorporated some of the gilded leafing embellishments that is part of the fine art floral. So I thought I'd jump on, show you how to make the card, but also show you how you can incorporate some of the gilded leafing and a few tips and tricks with this gilded leafing, because I know everybody that I've talked to seems a little bit daunted, I think, a little by the thought of using it, but it's actually really easy and it's amazing. I absolutely love it. And so I just want to give you a few tips and tricks so that you maybe aren't so afraid of trying it. Let me just switch over to my desktop and we'll get started. All right, so this is the card. Just trying to see, there you go. You can see the shine and the shimmer. This is from the gilded leafing that I've applied onto the seashells. What I absolutely love about this is the fact that it comes, this big die you can use as is, but they have an embossing folder that you can emboss it as well. Just love how it turns out, and it just makes it so easy to put a card together. Whether you decide to use the gilded leafing or you maybe you don't want to stamp and add some color to your seashells, just using this die makes a beautiful card. So let me just show you how I did this card. Well, actually, let me show you the bundle first. This is the bundle. The stamp set is called Friends Are Like Seashells. It is at 75% size image, so they do look smaller than they actually are when you open them up. But lovely images, as well as amazing sentiments. Look at this one. Friends are like seashells. You collect them along the way. Isn't that pretty? Okay. And then the dies. So you get a set of dies, including this really large die that does a few things. It cuts out this image that I cut out here, and on mine I actually cut out the seashells, and I'll show you how to do that. And then part of the product suite is this great embossing folder. Whether you choose to use the embossing folder just as is, or you use it to emboss this great die, it's up to you, but it's great. Okay, so this off to the side, bring in all of the measurements for this card will be on my blog, so the link to that blog post will be underneath, so you don't have to scramble to write it down. So I've got a piece of Seaside Spray cardstock that is cut 4 1/4 by 11, and I'm just going to fold this in half. The card base. I don't have my bone folder, so we'll just give that a burnish there. Okay, so that's that. I've got a piece of Sahara sand, which will be the background. So I'm just going to adhere this. Oops, and I'm out of Stampin' Seal. Okay, my other one. All right. That. Okay, so now I've got two pieces of basic white cardstock. One I've cut, this is cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. We're going to use this one to cut the die out. So this will go on here. It's a little bit larger die. And then the other one I'm going to use for the sentiment as well as for the seashells. So I'll just bring my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine in. And the plate. So with this, I find it easiest to cut first and then emboss. So it's very easy to line it up. So we'll just cut our die out. So as I said, for this one, I'm just using basic white cardstock. And this pieces come off here. Here's my, make sure you take your pick tool just to lift it up. So get the pieces out. And put this back on, which is why I'm Okay. Dye that. So this is the die that you get, the piece you get out when you've cut it. So I'm actually going to stamp first. Bring some blocks. Okay. I'm going to put my big shells here. And then there's my shells. And then there is, let's see what else did I, this one here. This one, this little one. Oops. Okay. All right, so I've grabbed my seaside spray. Don't need that for the shells. I've got Sahara sand, which I'm going to use on 2 of the shells. I'm going to use it on this one. And just roughly line it up. There we go. And this one. So it's pretty easy actually, just to, once you've got it cut out, just to line up and stamp. And then using Blushing Bride, I'm going to stamp this shell. On this one. I guess I did cut them. Just looking at my one, I'll use this one as well. And I'm just going to do this in, here's my Sahara sand. There we go. I'm not too worried if I don't let it out. By the time you get this embossed, it isn't going to show up. And I'm going to cut these out. So, okay, so I've got this piece. I also want to cut another piece while I'm at it. Should have done that when I did this. Okay, so let's bring my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine back. And we will cut one more of these as the background piece. So when you're cutting it out, cut out 2 of these big dies so that you can use one for your background and one to cut out the seashells from. Okay, so this will be my background piece. Take your pick tool to get this off. There we go. All the pieces out. Okay, so that's that. So I don't need that anymore, but I do need now to take this and emboss it. So I'll get my plates in so you can see. All right, so it's pretty easy when you put this in to line up. I'm trying to show you. It's probably hard to see, but you can pretty easy to line up I use the seaweed, I guess it is, to line up and get it in place. Because once you've got that in place, the rest of it is lined up. There we go. So now put this in and run this through to emboss it. I just love this embossing folder. So can you see the texture that it just adds to your seashells? It's so pretty. Okay. Put this off. Okay, that's good. Now, the one I cut out, the plain one, is just going to be a background. And then I'm going to overlay, so I'm just going to add some Stampin' Seal to the underneath the big seashells, and that's probably enough to hold this in place. There we go. So that will be the background. Now you can take your paper snips, and if you just cut around this, there's just a few spots where these seashells are joined to the rest of the die. So you can just take and cut the seashells off of the main die, and then you're set to use them however you want on a card like this with the die as a background, or as just seashells on your card itself. Lots of ways to use this. Okay, that's the one cut out. I wish I knew the names of all of these seashells. They're so pretty. I live on the west coast of Canada. I don't know that we have all of these seashells in our waters. It'd be sure cool if we did. They feel more tropical, some of them, to me. I may be wrong. There's that. It doesn't take too long to just trim around and get the seashells off so that you can use them. All right. Now I want to show you how you can actually use the gilded, oops, I forgot a little piece here. The gilded leafing on your seashells. So let me bring in the gilded leafing. Now, when this comes, when you order this, it comes in a jar that is just crammed full. I immediately take mine and put into this Ziploc or some kind of plastic container. And the reason I do this is because it is just easier to manage. It is very flyaway and staticky. And rather than, I find it easier to just take and dip, and I'll show you what I mean by that, take and dip my pieces into this container than to try and pick this up and deal with it. So I've just found that it works better. So you can see how sticky, staticky it is. Now I've taken one of the sponges that we sell and I've just cut it into quarters, and I leave that in here because that's what I'm going to use to get off some of the extra gilded leafing. So for this, what you're going to need is your stamps and your Versamark and some heat and stick powder, which we also now sell. Grab. Okay, so here's the heat and stick powder. So you're going to need this to make this gilded leafing. If you don't have heat and stick powder, you can use some of the things. I don't know how well it would work on these, but I use the tear and tape adhesive that works great on card fronts. You may try, I haven't tried the liquid, multi-purpose liquid adhesive, but it's possible it would work. But what I'm just going to do is take my stamp and put in the spun into the Versamark, and I'm just going to press down on here. And I'm not worried if it gets only partly on here, because I just really want it to be, let's see, I just want it to be a bit of an accent. I don't want the whole seashell covered. Oops. Now you're not going to be able to see that until we we're going to put the lid on that. So we'll do one and then I'll show you. So I'm going to bring my heat tool in here, and I apologize for the noise. I'll try and talk over it. I find that it works to use the heat tool from underneath the image rather than doing it like you would do embossing powder. And you will start to see the heat and stick powder melt. Takes a minute. Okay, there we go. Get rid of that noise. And now I just take, and I've dipped my seashell in here. And this is why I use this container, because now I can kind of control it and keep it in the container. And I take my sponge and just rub it until the extra, so you don't want to lose this because it's all good. So you can see there, you can see here that my shimmer is, it's not all over the seashell, it's just on parts of the seashell. So now I'm going to do the large one. I also find by embossing this first, the Versamark doesn't, you don't get the solid images of the Versamark. So here's my heat and stick powder. All right. I'll just set that aside and then I'll do my other, this one. And stamp. And that way I will only turn on the heat tool once because it's loud. Right. You don't want to do that. All right, we have to figure out how to get this. Did you do that? I've done this. Okay, hold here. Here we go. Let's see if I can scoop. Always a bad thing. That's why I try and close up my heat, whether it's embossing fold powder or the heat and stick powder. There, this isn't too bad. Rescue it. There we go. Close it up when you're finished using it so that you don't do that. You don't want to dump it all over the place. Okay. So now I'll bring back this in. And again, apologies for the noise, but and we'll just, from underneath, I'm just going to melt the heat and stick powder. I need to get my fingers in. Burn your fingers and don't want to get your fingers into it. Okay, so that's one. This one's going to be a little harder. It's hot. Luckily, it melts quickly. All right, so we've got that in there and that in there. So this is the big one. And I like the fact that it doesn't stick all over, and so you really just get some accents of the gilded leafing. And this one got more. That's okay. I've got more of the gold now. Take this up. So this is definitely a tip. Put your gilded leafing in a bigger container to manage it so that it doesn't get all over the place. Okay, so I've got this on here. Now, somewhere I have some dimensionals. And I'm just using the dimensionals to adhere these seashells that I cut out earlier on over top of the die. Isn't that pretty? Just the gold just adds so much. Now you could use embossing powder if you wanted to, if you didn't have the gilded leafing. Embossing powder. The embossing powder is a little bit more of a matte, a duller matte finish, so it's not quite so shiny as your as the gilded leafing is, but it works as well. And one more. And there's that. Yeah. Pretty with the gold on it. So one more thing that I need to do. I think I've got here a piece of the basic white. Now I'm going to stamp with the Seaside Spray the sentiment that says, "Friends are like seashells, you collect them along the way." Okay, and then I've got my punch here. And I grabbed some of this really pretty Seaside Spray scalloped linen thread. And I'm just going to put a little strip underneath. And so you can see it. So I'll just put a strip like this underneath. And the dimensionals here. So use up what we have. And put this in like that. Let's trim this ribbon a little bit so it's not sticking so much over my card. And then the last thing I've got are these really pretty opal rounds. These are they're opalescent. You can color them with your blends if you want. They come in 2 sizes. So I'm just going to grab these and I'm going to put, oopsie, apply them all over. Put them, I'll just put 3 on. I always go in odd numbers. 3 seems to be the right number. Oops. And one of the smaller ones. There. Okay, so that's the card that I made. It's just so pretty, and the gilded leafing just adds a really nice touch to it. It would be pretty even without it. So if you're not into the gilded leafing, that's okay. This stamp set and the dies and the embossing folder are so beautiful. They will make a beautiful card. So let me just switch back to, there we go. So I hope you enjoyed that. I will be posting all of the measurements on my blog as well as the written instructions. So that link to my blog post will be underneath this video when it goes live, so that you can go out to my blog and check it out. Also, while you're here, I'd love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do the postings on a regular basis of new videos, so you'll be able to get those instructions and see how they're made and some of the tips and tricks. So I hope you enjoyed the card. Thanks for joining me. Bye, everybody.